Funny thing about lies, they always come home late.
The sound of Vivian's heels clicking on our hardwood floor at 2:11 a.m. was becoming as predictable as her lies. I sat in my leather chair, shrouded in darkness, watching my wife of 6 years stumble through our townhouse like a teenager sneaking past curfew. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, Alex Mercer, a guy who could rebuild a yacht engine blindfolded, yet I couldn't fix my own marriage. Creative inspiration strikes at the strangest hours, I said, flicking on the lamp. Vivian jumped, her designer purse spilling contents across our Persian rug. Among the usual suspects, lipstick, keys, breath mints, a silk tie tumbled out. Navy blue with gold stripes. Definitely not mine. I preferred my ties like my marriage vows, simple and honest. "Alex, you scared me to death!" She pressed her manicured hand to her chest, playing the sufferer with Oscar-worthy conviction. "I was at the studio working on the Henderson project. You know how demanding they are." "Funny thing about the Henderson project, Viv. I called your office at midnight. No answer. Drove by at 1:30. Dark as a tomb." I picked up the tie, examining it like evidence at a crime scene. "This is expensive, Italian silk, the kind Brandon Chase wears to those yacht club meetings." Her face went through more color changes than a mood ring. That's from a client presentation." Brandon was showing fabric samples. "At 2 a.m? In a hotel room?" I held up her phone, which had been buzzing incessantly. The screen showed a text from B. "You wore me out, babe. Next time, my place. Don't forget the red heels." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Vivian's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for water. Finally, she found her voice. "You went through my phone? How dare you? That's a violation of privacy, Alex. You're being paranoid and controlling." "Paranoid?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Lady, paranoid is thinking the mailman is reading your letters. This is called paying attention." I walked to our bedroom and returned with a small suitcase. The one she'd claimed was for weekend inspiration trips to Portland. Inside, I found lingerie I'd never seen her wear, receipts from expensive restaurants I'd never been to, and photos. Lots of photos. "Jesus, Viv. How long has this been going on?" She straightened her spine, switching from sufferer to ice queen in seconds. "Brandon understands my ambitions. He supports my dreams. All you do is work on boats and drink beer with that loser Mick." "That loser Mick served 3 tours in Middle East. What's Brandon's biggest accomplishment? Inheriting daddy's real estate empire? At least he has ambition. At least he's going somewhere in life." I pulled off my wedding ring and set it on the coffee table. The small golden circle seemed to echo in the sudden quiet. "You're right, Viv. Brandon's definitely going somewhere. Probably straight to hell, but that's his journey. As for me, I'm going to bed. In the guest room. We'll talk lawyers in the morning." As I headed upstairs, Vivian called after me, her voice cracking. "Alex, wait. We can work this out." "It didn't mean anything." I paused on the landing. "You know what the square root of liar is, Viv? Single." The next morning, while Vivian showered off her guilt, I did what any reasonable man would do. I opened her laptop. The password was pathetically easy. Our wedding anniversary, which apparently meant more to me than to her. What I found in her inspiration folder made my blood run cold, then hot, then cold again. Hundreds of messages between Vivian and Brandon, dating back 8 months. Explicit photos, hotel receipts, and worse, much worse, conversations about me. Brandon. "When are you going to dump the grease monkey?" Vivian. "Soon. I'm documenting his anger issues first. Greta thinks I should claim misuse for a better settlement." Brandon. "Smart girl. I love your devious mind." Vivian. "Just one of my many talents. I screenshot everything, uploaded it to a secure cloud drive, and printed copies. Then I called in sick to the marina. Today wasn't about fixing other people's boats. Today was about fixing my life." My phone rang. Mick's name flashed on the screen. "You sound like hell, brother." His gravelly voice filled the kitchen. "What's eating you?" "Vivian's been cheating with Brandon Chase." Silence. Then, "That pretentious piece of garbage? Alex, I'm sorry, man. What do you need?" "Information, revenge, maybe both. Meet me at the Rusty Anchor at noon. And Alex, bring those photos." The Rusty Anchor hadn't changed in 20 years. Same sticky floors, same neon beer signs, same smell of fried clams and broken dreams. Mick sat in our usual booth nursing a coffee and looking like he could bench press a Buick. His navy tattoos told stories of places I'd never been, battles I'd never fought. "Show me what you got," he said, without preamble. I slid the folder across the scarred wooden table. Mick's expression darkened with each page. This is some sick stuff, Alex. 8 months? And they're planning to frame you? Gets better. Check out page 12. He flipped to a conversation from 3 weeks ago. Vivian. Alex is getting suspicious. He asked about my Tuesday meetings. Brandon. We need to be more careful. Maybe take a break. Vivian. No way. I'm not giving up the best sex of my life because my husband grew a brain. Brandon. What if he finds out? Vivian. Then we accelerate the timeline. I'll claim misuse, take half his assets, and we'll sail off into the sunset on your yacht. Mick's jaw tightened. They want to play games? Let's play games. But we do this smart, legal, and devastating. The bell above the door chimed, and Janice Henderson walked in. My 70-year-old neighbor looked like a sweet grandmother, but she'd spent 30 years as a private investigator before retiring to our street. Her gray hair was perfectly coiffed, her eyes sharp as razors. Mick called me, she said, sliding into the booth. Said you needed help with a cheating spouse situation. I handed her the folder. She read silently, occasionally making small notes in a leather journal. This is good evidence, but we need more. Real-time proof, financial records, witness statements. She looked up at me. How far are you willing to go? As far as it takes. They want to destroy my reputation? Let's see how they handle having theirs dragged through the mud. I like your style, honey. First things first, we need to document everything. Mick, you still have those surveillance contacts? A few. What are you thinking? Legal surveillance, public places only. We build a timeline, establish patterns, maybe catch them in more lies. She turned to me. Alex, I need you to act normal. Don't confront her yet. Let them think they're safe. Over the next 2 hours, we planned my counteroffensive. Janice would handle the investigation, Mick would provide muscle if needed, and I would play the role of oblivious husband while gathering evidence. One more thing, Janice said as we prepared to leave. Vivian's best friend Greta comes in here every Thursday night. Drinks too much, talks too much. Might be worth a listen. That Thursday, I positioned myself at the bar while Greta held court at a corner table with 3 other women. The alcohol loosened her tongue like a confession booth. Vivian is living her best life, Greta slurred, gesturing wildly with her wine glass. Brandon Chase, can you believe it? He's taking her to Paris next month. What about Alex? One of her friends asked. What about him? He's a boat mechanic. Brandon owns half the waterfront. Vivian deserves someone who can keep up with her sophistication. Isn't she still married? Greta waved dismissively. Not for long. She's got it all figured out. Alex has anger issues, you know. Very controlling. She's been documenting everything. My grip tightened on my beer bottle. The lies were spreading like cancer through our social circle. I heard Brandon's wife doesn't know, another woman whispered. Catherine, please. She's too busy with her charity committees to notice her husband's wandering eye. Besides, what she doesn't know won't hurt her. I discreetly activated my phone's voice recorder. Every word was digital gold. The conversation continued for another hour, with Greta revealing details about hotel meetings, weekend trips, and Vivian's plan to claim I was emotionally abusive. By closing time, I had enough ammunition to start a war. The next morning, I called Vivian's office and asked to speak with Liam Morrison, her assistant and the closest thing she had to a male friend at work. Liam was 35, single, and hopelessly in love with my wife. He also had a gambling problem and owed money to some unsavory people. Liam, it's Alex Mercer. We need to talk. Oh, hi, Alex. Vivian's not in yet. I'm not calling about Vivian. I'm calling about you. Meet me at Murphy's Diner on Commercial Street. 1 hour. I arrived early and chose a booth with a view of the parking lot. Liam shuffled in looking like a man walking to his execution. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled. Alex, I don't know what this is about. Sit down, Liam. I slid a manila envelope across the table. Open it. Inside were printouts of his gambling debts, loan shark contacts, and a photo of him leaving an illegal poker game downtown. His face went white. How did you... I have friends in interesting places. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything you know about Vivian and Brandon's affair. Every detail, every lie, every plan they've made. In return, I'll help you with your debt problem. I can't betray Vivian. She's been good to me. Has she? Because from where I sit, she's been using you as her personal cover story. How many times have you lied to me about her whereabouts? How many fake meetings have you scheduled to give her alibis? Liam's hands shook as he reached for his coffee. She said you were having problems, that you were controlling and jealous. And you believed her because you're in love with her. It wasn't a question. He nodded miserably. She knows. She uses it against me, makes me feel like I have a chance if I just help her through this rough patch. Liam, she's never going to choose you. She's using you the same way she used me until something better came along. The difference is I can help you start over somewhere else. New city, clean slate, your debt's paid. All I need is the truth. For the next hour, Liam spilled everything. The fake meetings, the forged documents, Vivian's plan to claim domestic misuse, and most damning of all, evidence that she'd been skimming money from client accounts to fund her affair. She made me change the books, he whispered. Small amounts, spread across multiple accounts. She said it was temporary, just until she got her divorce settlement. That's embezzlement, Liam. You could go to prison. I know, but she said if I didn't help her, she'd tell everyone about my gambling. I'd lose my job, my apartment, everything. I pulled out a digital recorder and placed it on the table. Tell me again, everything. On the record this time. The Seaside Yacht Club's annual spring gala was the social event of the season. Old money mixed with new money while everyone pretended to care about marine conservation. Vivian had been planning to attend with Brandon, their public debut as a couple. She'd bought a $3,000 dress for the occasion. She didn't know I'd bought a ticket, too. I spent the afternoon preparing my presentation. Janice had helped me create a digital slideshow titled Modern Art, A Study in Deception. The photos from Vivian's folder were carefully edited, faces blurred just enough to avoid lawsuits, but not enough to hide identities from people who knew them well. At 7 p.m., I walked into the yacht club wearing my best suit and a smile that could cut glass. The ballroom was packed with the city's elite, all nursing cocktails and gossiping about each other's business. I spotted Vivian immediately. She looked stunning in her red dress, hanging on Brandon's arm like a trophy. Alex? Catherine Chase appeared at my elbow, looking confused. I didn't expect to see you here. Where's Vivian? That's a great question, Catherine. Why don't we find out together? I guided Brandon's wife toward the bar, where her husband was holding court with several city councilmen. Vivian saw me coming, and her face went through several interesting color changes. Alex, what are you doing here? Her voice was pitched higher than usual, stress bleeding through her composed facade. Supporting marine conservation, same as everyone else. I turned to Brandon, extending my hand. Brandon, great to see you again. Love your tie, by the way. Italian silk? His handshake was aggressive, meant to intimidate. I squeezed back just hard enough to make my point. Alex Mercer, right? The boat mechanic. Vivian's mentioned you. I'm sure she has. All good things, I hope. The conversation continued with polite venom while I waited for my moment. At 8:30, the lights dimmed for the evening's presentation about local marine life. I'd paid the AV technician $500 to add my slideshow to the queue. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC announced, our next presentation showcases the beauty of our coastal waters through the lens of local photographer Alex Mercer. The confusion in his voice was perfect. Before anyone could react, my slideshow began playing on the room's massive screen. The first few slides were legitimate marine photography, beautiful shots of whales, seals, and fishing boats. The audience relaxed. Then, the tone shifted. Modern relationships, my recorded voice narrated, can be as complex as ocean ecosystems. Sometimes species that appear to mate for life actually engage in elaborate deception. The next slide showed a hotel receipt from the Harbor View Inn. The one after that was a text message conversation, names blurred but content clear. The audience began to murmur. Fascinating mating rituals, my narration continued, often involve elaborate displays and territorial behavior. A photo of Brandon's car in the hotel parking lot. Another of Vivian entering the same hotel 3 minutes later. The murmur became a buzz. Some species are parasitic, feeding off their hosts while contributing nothing to the ecosystem. Bank statements showing money transfers from Vivian's business account to personal expenses. Hotel bills, restaurant receipts, jewelry purchases. The room erupted in whispers. I watched Brandon's face turn purple, while Vivian looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. The most dangerous predators, my voice concluded, are those that hunt in pairs, targeting unsuspecting prey. The final slide was a photo of Vivian and Brandon kissing on his yacht, taken with a telephoto lens from a public pier. Their faces were clearly visible. Brandon lunged toward the AV booth, but it was too late. The slideshow had ended, and 300 of the city's most influential people had seen everything. You son of a witch! Brandon charged at me, fists raised. I sidestepped smoothly, and his momentum carried him straight into the champagne fountain. He emerged, dripping, and sputtering, his expensive tuxedo ruined, his dignity in tatters. The room fell silent except for the sound of champagne cascading and Brandon's heavy breathing. "Careful, Brandon," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "That's attack! And we both know how you feel about legal troubles." Security moved in, but not to escort me out. The club's board members were huddled in urgent conversation, their faces grim. Catherine Chase stood frozen, staring at the screen where the final image still glowed. Vivian grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my jacket. "How could you do this to me? To us?" "Us?" I laughed. "Viv, there hasn't been an us for 8 months. There's been you, him, and me paying the bills. You've ruined everything." "No, sweetheart. You ruined everything. I just made sure everyone else knew about it." Greta appeared, trying to play damage control. "This is all a misunderstanding. Alex is having a breakdown." "Actually, Greta," I pulled out my phone and played the recording from the rusty anchor. "Let's hear what you really think about the situation." Her own drunken voice filled the silent ballroom, describing Vivian's affair in graphic detail and mocking me as a boat mechanic who didn't deserve someone so sophisticated. The crowd turned on them like a pack of wolves scenting blood. These people lived for scandal, but only when it wasn't happening to them. Being exposed publicly was social self-destruction. I walked toward the exit, pausing only to hand Catherine Chase a USB drive. "What's this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Photos of your husband with his secretary, his real estate partner's wife, and a college student who works at his office. Vivian wasn't his first affair, Catherine. She was just the most recent." As I reached the door, I heard Vivian screaming my name. I didn't look back. The next morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. Janice's cheerful voice greeted me. "Morning, honey. Have you seen the society page?" "Not yet. Should I?" "Oh, you definitely should." The headline reads, "Yacht Club Gala becomes divorce announcement party." There's a lovely photo of Brandon in the champagne fountain. I laughed for the first time in months. What about the business angle? Even better, Vivian's been fired from her own company. The board called an emergency meeting last night. Embezzlement charges are being filed today. And Brandon? Catherine's divorce attorney is having a field day. Turns out infidelity clauses in prenups are still enforceable. He's about to lose half his empire. I hung up and made coffee, watching the sunrise over the harbor. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Brandon Chase wasn't the type of man to accept humiliation gracefully. I knew he'd come for me, so I prepared accordingly. What I didn't expect was how quickly he'd lose his mind. The first sign of trouble came Tuesday morning when I arrived at the marina to find my truck's tires slashed. Security cameras caught a figure in dark clothing, but the face was obscured. Still, the expensive watch glinting on his wrist looked familiar. "Subtle as a brick through a window," Mick observed, examining the damage. "Want me to have a conversation with him?" "Not yet. Let him escalate. The more desperate he gets, the more mistakes he'll make." I was right. By Thursday, Brandon had progressed to following me around town in his silver Porsche, apparently unaware that I could see him in my mirrors. His surveillance skills made amateur hour look professional. That's when I decided to have some fun. Friday afternoon, I led him on a tour of our fair city. First stop, the industrial laundromat where I pretended to meet with a contact. Brandon sat in his car for 45 minutes, watching me fold towels with Mrs. Patterson, an 80-year-old widow who found the whole situation hilarious. "Is that the man who's been bothering you, dear?" she asked, peering through the window at Brandon's increasingly agitated figure. "That's him, rich boy having a tantrum." "Well, he picked the wrong person to mess with. You Mercers have always been tougher than you look." Next, I drove to the seediest part of town and entered Big Eddie's pawn shop. Eddie was an old friend who owed me a favor from when I'd fixed his boat engine for free. I explained the situation, and he was happy to help. "So you want me to act like we're making some kind of deal?" Eddie grinned, revealing gold teeth. "I can do that. Always wanted to be in a movie." For 20 minutes, Eddie and I engaged in an elaborate pantomime of a criminal transaction, complete with briefcase exchanges and furtive glances toward the window. Brandon nearly gave himself whiplash trying to see what was happening. The final stop was the abandoned warehouse district near the docks. I parked behind a building and waited. Sure enough, Brandon's Porsche crept around the corner 5 minutes later. I'd prepared for this moment, hidden speakers, motion-activated lights, and a crowd of witnesses, courtesy of Mick's network of veterans who hung out at the rusty anchor. They were positioned throughout the area, ready for my signal. Brandon parked and approached on foot, trying to be stealthy. He made it about 20 yards before triggering the first motion sensor. Suddenly, the area lit up like a football stadium, while speakers blared the William Tell Overture at maximum volume. Brandon spun around confused and panicked. That's when I stepped out of the shadows. Looking for something, Brandon? You son of a witch! What kind of game are you playing? The kind where I win and you lose. Question is, how badly do you want to lose? He lunged at me, but I was ready. Years of working with heavy machinery had kept me in decent shape, while Brandon's idea of exercise was lifting martini glasses. I sidestepped his clumsy attack and watched him stumble into a pile of old fishing nets. Careful there, champ. Wouldn't want you to hurt yourself. That's when my audience emerged from the shadows. 20 rough-looking men, all veterans, all loyal to Mick, all very interested in Brandon's aggressive behavior toward their friend. Problem here, Alex? Asked Tommy, a former Marine with arms like tree trunks. No problem, Tommy. Mr. Chase was just leaving. Brandon looked around at the circle of unfriendly faces and apparently decided discretion was the better part of valor. He scrambled to his feet and ran for his car, leaving behind his dignity and one very expensive shoe. The next morning brought news that made my coffee taste even better. Janice called with an update. Brandon's business partners held an emergency meeting last night. Seems they're not happy about the negative publicity. Word is they're buying him out. Forced retirement? More like corporate exile, and it gets better. Remember that USB drive you gave Catherine? She's been busy, filed for divorce, frozen their joint accounts, and hired the nastiest attorney in the state. What about Vivian? That's the beautiful part. She tried to crawl back to her old job, begging forgiveness. The board laughed her out of the building. Then she tried to get a loan to start her own firm. Apparently, embezzlement convictions make banks nervous. I spent the weekend working on boats and enjoying the peace. No angry texts from Vivian, no death glares from her friends, no silver Porsche in my rearview mirror. It was almost anticlimactic. That should have been my first warning. Monday morning, I walked into the marina office to find Detective Sarah Morrison waiting for me. She was Liam's sister, a fact I'd forgotten until she introduced herself. Mr. Mercer? I need to ask you some questions about Brandon Chase. My blood went cold. What about him? He filed a complaint alleging maltreatment, stalking, and conspiracy. Says you've been threatening him, following him around town, and trying to destroy his business relationships. I sat down slowly. That's interesting, Detective. Do you have any evidence of these alleged crimes? Just his word against yours, but I have to investigate all complaints. She paused, studying my face. Off the record? My brother told me what really happened, how Vivian used him, how she and Chase planned to frame you. Liam's testimony could be very helpful if this goes to court. And on the record, I'd advise you to be very careful. Brandon Chase still has friends in high places, and desperate men do desperate things. She was right. I'd underestimated Brandon's connections and overestimated his intelligence. A smart man would have cut his losses and disappeared quietly. Brandon was apparently going for broke. That afternoon, I called a meeting at the Rusty Anchor. Mick, Janice, and Tommy gathered around our usual table while I explained the situation. He's trying to flip the script, I concluded, make himself the sufferer and me the villain. Classic narcissist move, Janice observed. When they can't win, they try to drag everyone down with them. So what's the play? Mick asked. I smiled. We give him exactly what he wants. A final confrontation, but on our terms, in front of witnesses with everything recorded. You sure about this, brother? Could backfire. It could, but I'm tired of playing defense. Time to end this once and for all. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Brandon wanted a confrontation. I'd give him one he'd never forget. First, I needed bait. I had Liam call Brandon's office and leave a message saying I'd agreed to meet at the Rusty Anchor to work things out like gentlemen. The meeting was set for Friday night at 9 p.m. Next, I prepared the battlefield. Janice arranged for discreet recording equipment throughout the bar. Mick ensured we'd have a full house of witnesses, all respectable, sober citizens who happened to be veterans. The local newspaper's crime reporter, who owed me a favor, would be having a drink at the bar. The final piece was insurance. I'd prepared a complete dossier on Brandon's business dealings, including evidence of bribery, tax evasion, and fraud that went back years. If he wanted to play hardball, I had a Louisville Slugger. Friday night arrived gray and rainy, perfect weather for endings. I arrived at the Rusty Anchor at 8:30 to find the place packed. Word had spread through the veteran community that something big was happening, and they'd turned out to support one of their own. Mick pulled me aside. "You sure about this? Once this starts, there's no going back." "I've been sure since the moment I found those photos. Brandon and Vivian wanted to destroy my life for their entertainment. Time to return the favor." At exactly 9 p.m., Brandon walked through the door. He'd brought backup. 2 men in expensive suits who looked like they'd learned their people skills in prison. The bar went quiet as conversations died and heads turned. "Alex," Brandon's voice carried across the room. "So good of you to finally agree to meet. We have so much to discuss." He approached our table with his bodyguards flanking him like bookends. Up close, I could see the stress had taken its toll. His eyes were bloodshot, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his hands shaking slightly. "Brandon, you look terrible. Divorce proceedings keeping you up at night?" "Very funny. You think you're so clever, don't you? Destroying my marriage, my business relationships, my reputation, but you made one mistake." "Just one? I'm usually more thorough than that." "You forgot that I have resources you can't imagine, friends in very high places. It would be a shame if something happened to your little boat repair business, or your friend's bar, or that sweet old lady who lives next door." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Around the room, I could feel the tension ratchet up several notches. These were men who'd faced real danger in real wars, and they didn't appreciate bullies. "Are you threatening me, Brandon? I'm offering you a choice. Leave town quietly and everyone stays safe. Keep pushing and things might get complicated." That's when Janice stood up from her table near the window. "Excuse me, gentlemen. Did I just hear you threaten this young man and his friends?" Brandon turned, annoyed at the interruption. "This is a private conversation, lady. Mind your own business." "Oh, but it is my business. You see, I'm a retired police detective, and I've been investigating your activities for several weeks now." She opened a thick folder and began reading. "Bribery of city officials, tax evasion, fraud, conspiracy to commit perjury, and now criminal threats. Quite a resume." "You can't prove any of that." "Actually, I can." She pulled out a stack of photographs and documents. "Bank records showing payments to City Councilman Davis in exchange for zoning variances. Tax returns that don't match your actual income. Forged documents used to defraud investors in your Harbor Point development." Brandon's face went white. "Where did you get those?" "Your business partner, Marcus Webb. Turns out he's been keeping detailed records of all your illegal activities as insurance. When his wife filed for divorce and named you as co-respondent, he decided to cut a deal with the authorities." "That's impossible. Marcus would never betray you. The way you betrayed Alex, the way you betrayed your wife. Face it, Brandon, you're not half as smart as you think you are." I stood up slowly, enjoying the moment. "Here's what's going to happen, Brandon. You're going to walk out of here and never contact me again. You're going to plead guilty to the charges against you and serve your time quietly. And you're going to stay away from everyone I care about. And if I don't, then I release the rest of the evidence to the FBI, the IRS, and every newspaper in the state. Your choice." Brandon looked around the room at 40 hostile faces staring back at him. His bodyguards had quietly moved toward the exit, apparently deciding their paychecks weren't worth the trouble. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Yeah, it is." I pulled out my phone and played a recording of our entire conversation. "Criminal threats, conspiracy, attempted extortion. Detective Morrison is going to love this." Brandon's shoulders sagged as the fight went out of him. He was finished, and he knew it. "What about Vivian?" he asked quietly. "What about her? She made her choice 8 months ago. Now she gets to live with the consequences." As if summoned by her name, Vivian burst through the bar's front door. She looked terrible, her hair unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes red from crying. "Alex, please, we need to talk." The entire bar turned to stare at this new entertainment. Vivian seemed to realize where she was for the first time, taking in the hostile faces and tense atmosphere. "This is all your fault!" she screamed at me. "You destroyed everything! My career, my reputation, my future!" "I didn't destroy anything, Viv. I just stopped enabling your lies. I loved you. We could have worked it out." "You loved my paycheck. You loved having someone to blame for your problems. You never loved me." She turned to Brandon, desperation in her voice. Tell him we're going to Paris together. Tell him about our plans." Brandon looked at her with disgust. "There are no plans, Vivian. There never were. You were just a distraction, a way to pass time. Did you really think I'd leave my wife for a small-town interior decorator?" The words hit her like physical blows. She staggered backward, her face crumpling. "But you said You promised. I said a lot of things. You chose to believe them. That's when Greta appeared, looking nervous but determined. Vivian, we need to leave. Now. Greta, thank God. At least someone still cares about me. Actually, Greta said quietly, I'm here to apologize to Alex. I've been lying for you for months, covering for your affair, helping you plan to frame him for misuse. I can't do it anymore. She turned to face the room. Alex Mercer is a good man. He didn't deserve what we did to him. Vivian manipulated all of us, made us believe he was the problem when she was the one destroying their marriage. Vivian looked around the room, seeing only hostile faces and closed hearts. The reality of her situation finally sank in. She was alone, broke, unemployed, and facing criminal charges. This isn't how it was supposed to end, she whispered. No, I agreed. It was supposed to end with me broken, and you sailing off into the sunset with Brandon's money, but life has a funny way of balancing the books. She stumbled toward the door, her fantasy finally shattered. Brandon followed, his bodyguards having long since abandoned him. As the door closed behind them, the bar erupted in cheers and applause. Mick clapped me on the back while Janice raised her glass in a toast. To justice served cold, she announced. To friends who stick by you when things get ugly, I replied. We drank until closing time, celebrating not just my victory, but the end of a chapter I was ready to close forever. 6 months later, I received 2 pieces of mail that made my day. The first was a postcard from Liam, who'd taken my advice and moved to Seattle. He'd found a job with an honest company and was attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings. The second was a newspaper clipping from the business section. Former real estate developer sentenced to 5 years for fraud. The accompanying photo showed Brandon in handcuffs, looking nothing like the arrogant man who'd threatened me in the bar. As for Vivian, I heard through the grapevine that she'd moved back in with her parents and was working at a chain store in the mall. Her dreams of sophisticated city living had died with her reputation. I never saw her again, and that was exactly how I wanted it. The honeymoon was over, and so were they.